Hello, I'm Leroy Garcia, and this is Blue Rain Gallery Podcast. Today in our studio, we're honored to have another wonderful guest all the way from Australia, and his name is Lew Brennan. And we're going to talk to him a little bit today, introduce everybody to him. He's quite the force as far as painting goes. One of the things that I really loved about Lew Brennan is the Western culture that exists in Australia, the horse culture, right? Welcome, Lew.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, thank you. You've traveled a long ways.
Yeah.
So for our listeners, what I'd like to do is have you give us a brief biography of yourself, where you were raised, when you started getting into art, and a little bit about your journey.
All right. So it's a long story, so pull me up whenever.
That's okay.
Yeah, I was just born drawing pretty much. I think I can remember at least 5 years old with a pen in hand or a pencil in hand, and never put it down. Primary school, just drawing away, evenings, whatever. And interestingly, and I don't quite understand why, but even in those days, drawing horses. And I think it may be the complexity of the challenge, I was immediately committed to realism and used to draw from magazines and try and copy an advertisement or anything that looked interesting. And then I would ask my parents, can you tell which one is which? So that was ingrained in me somehow. Had a love of reading of the great Renaissance artists, and Goya was a favorite, particularly in the 60s and 70s, listening to all the rock and roll music. And then, I just kept progressing. I fell in love with the art of the 60s and 70s. Album covers and posters were very popular, of course, Mouse Studios on Grateful Dead albums and things, I kept getting drawn in. I think too then I got hit with the American hyper-realism, and I'm looking back and wondering how it came across my path, because there was no internet, there was no technology like that, so it would have been books and magazines and hunting them down. But the hyper-realists really captured what it was that I was trying to achieve, and probably at the time I hadn't realised what I was able to achieve. Goings and Estes and all of those guys just set the goal for me, and I went after that goal. But carried on with the horses and that real life of Australian life. It's quite a strong.
So
life.
it had an influence of ranching. So how many years have you been living that type of lifestyle?
Well, I was high school, and I met a beautiful young girl at high school, and she was a horse girl. And she's sitting in the room here now, 50 years later.
What's her name?
Her name is Maureen, known as Moz, and she was a horse girl. And even in those days, when we were at high school, she had horses. And so that was it. It came as a package. And years later, we got married, and her parents had a ranch, you would call it, but we call them a farm. There's 700 acres. And there was cattle there and some horses there. But with her dad lived in Brisbane, the capital of Queensland, and he was a businessman. He was managing an airline. And it was a weekender for him. But when we were married, we had his blessing to come up and make a real farm out of it, and that's what we did. And so there was quarter horses, and there was cattle, and there was a lot of hard work. And as well as that, I was working construction because the farm wasn't paying a profit at the time. And yet, in amongst all of that, I was painting and drawing at night, and going 100 miles an hour 7 days a week for 30 years.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how did you balance ranching life, which is very hard. So taking care of 700 acres is very difficult, and then being able to paint, because you're kind of prolific in your painting too.
Yeah, there has been times when it's not so prolific, but I was lucky enough to pick up some galleries in and around our region. Not far from us is a very popular coastal resort town of Noosa Heads. So if you think about Florida somewhere maybe, or Carmel in California, it's a little bit exclusive. It didn't used to be. When we were young, it was a surfing, fishing town, and a wonderful, wonderful place. So I was doing construction work down there and farming, but galleries picked me up and wanted my work, and so I forced myself. So there was lots of late nights and getting work done, particularly for an exhibition. Mostly shared exhibitions, and they were selling well, and it just encouraged me to just keep going. And I would never give it up. It was in my blood.
Yeah. Before we start talking more about your art, you seem to a little bit like the Southwest corridor. Why?
A wonderful question, and I can't really be specific about it. So if we go back to the beginning of this conversation, for one reason or another, I've had an infatuation about Native American culture. I'm impressed and in love with their designs, and I can't explain that. But it just stood out to me as something that I really did fall in love with, and I don't know that I imagined I would ever be a part of it, but it's just been something that I've been a little bit obsessed with. And 17 years ago, we drove through here. It was a wonderful trip. My eldest son, who is a designer and furniture maker and jewelry maker now, we drove, and Moz and I, and just soaked up this culture. It was a wonderful, wonderful thing, and always wanted to be back here. So here we are, and thanks to you and Blue Rain, and just absorbing it. We're just soaking it in.
I had a couple in yesterday, and they were from Australia. They were about to walk out, and they're like, "We collect Australian art," and I'm like, "Well, we have an artist from Australia."
Yeah, you've come all this way, right?
You've come all this way, and here you go.
Yeah, it's your lucky day.
I'm like, what are the similarities between Australia and the Southwest? Because they drove up from Austin, Texas, over here.
Yeah,
and they're like, well, the only difference is we saw a lot of dead deer on the road instead of kangaroos.
Yeah, that's it.
Because they look the same to them.
It's very much alike. And look, I think as a nation, we're like a little brother to USA. And then because we had that ranch, farm, and horses and cattle, I think there's that immediate relationship with the Southwest. And look, we have to credit television too for a lot of this.
Yeah.
Television hit us. Prior to television, we were an English colony, and the cars were English made, and even now Australian cars were based around English cars. World War II, and the Americans came down south, thank you very much. MacArthur saved us from the Japanese at the time, and the Americans stayed in Australia and New Zealand in great numbers. But television came, and we were just overwhelmed. It was like a massive wave of US culture that swept across the whole of Australia and became a part of our life through television.
Yeah.
So we're almost a state of the USA.
Yeah. It seems like that there's an affinity towards each other across the board, even how we handled COVID.
Yeah.
We were talking about that a little bit.
That's right. Yeah.
It's very interesting. Well, let's move on to some of these things. So we were just downstairs. There was this couple looking at one of your horse paintings, and it's very beautiful. It's called Zoe's Beauty, right? Yeah. Describe the painting a little bit. Well, and what was their question, right?
Yeah, so it's charcoal on paper. So going back to the very beginnings, it was my handling of pencil to start with, and then charcoal was a natural progression for me because it's so much more powerful, and there's other qualities. It doesn't have a gloss to it when it's completed, whereas pencil has a wax inside it, which makes it a bit glossy for me. So it's the outcome of all of those years of working with charcoal and working with horses. And as the couple were saying, they were taken by not only the detail, because I'm hyper-realist in my style, or at least realist, but the folds of the skin from where the leather is pushing the skin, and the stitching on the leatherwork is as much a reality in the horse world as the hide itself, the skin of the horse. Obviously, the horse has been working hard because the veins are pumped, and so that gives me more to work with. These are the things I look for. And the light and shade is very important so that I get dimension to this. So where the leatherwork shows a shadow, I amplify that a little. They're intrigued by how I make things jump off the page, and it's all light and shade.
Yeah. What we're talking to you about is the veins. Kind of like a weightlifter was talking to Marina there. Yeah, horse expert.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but the amount of detail and stuff, how much time does it take to do that size of painting? It's a fairly good size painting.
The reason for the scale in the first instance is it's quite powerful when people come across it, but it also gives me that space to work into the detail more. Whereas a smaller piece of paper or canvas, it gives you limitations. Charcoal's quite demanding. It's quite a broad-based drawing instrument. So there's a lot of sharpening going on there to capture what I do. The trick with the veins is to incorporate it into the hair, and it's again about the use of broadening the attachment of the charcoal on the shadow side of the veins and pumping them up, and it's a lifetime of work, I guess, with both horses and light and shade and charcoal.
Well, they're beautiful. You did an oil on canvas that I like too. It's called the Midnight Rider.
Yeah.
And so the difference in time between those, but you still capture a lot of detail, and it's almost pure black.
Yeah.
Right?
I love a challenge. So that's a part of that painting. And I think too, you do something regularly, like with Zoe's Beauty, where it's black on white. But the idea of doing white on black was the challenge, and still capturing that emotion of the horse that people who love horses get emotional over these works, which is what part of my desire is. But also people who have never seen it before, they can get emotional.
It reminds me of that. The Midnight Rider reminds me of the Pueblo Padre of Santa Clara, of San Ildefonso, black on black.
Unbelievable.
There's a gradation of colors that you're playing with, because it's not exactly a white horse. I mean, it is, but it's in a shadow on a black background.
Yeah, that pottery just blows me away. And there it is again, where that connection to the Southwest and Indian culture, and and your glass work. I just can't comprehend how you can possibly do it. Yeah.
Blue Rain has had a huge impact on the glass world in the native community, for sure.
Well, I think beyond, I'm not sure how far it spreads, but it's just, I've never seen glass work like it ever. And my mum collected a little bit of glass. She was quite worldly in that regard, but I've still seen nothing like your work. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's something very new, like within the last 30 years.
Yeah.
That has kind of developed, but it's based on old traditions. And it's something that you can study in art too, right? We're all based on older traditions to develop a new path forward. So
Yep.
That's pretty cool. There's a couple pieces you did that were portraiture. The Girl from the North Country.
Oh yeah.
Tell me about that one.
A lot of the names of my art come from music, so that's an obvious one. Bob Dylan made a great version of that. I'm pretty sure it goes back to English or Irish folklore music, and so I'm not sure whether the title dragged me into that first, but some of these things hang around in the back of my mind for 20, 30 years before I can actually apply it. I don't know what brings it up, but there's triggers that bring things up to the front of my mind, and I'm going, yep, I'm in. So a friend of mine is a lovely photographer, great photographer. Erwin Lowen is Canadian, and he takes professionally a lot of photographs of girls who are modeling or fashion or for magazines and things like that. And he only uses natural light. And he took a photo of that girl. She's Canadian. And I rearranged everything after that fact. But there was something about that girl that drew me in to create that piece. And then the bridles and Maureen's chaps, they're hanging on the back of my studio wall. I mean, that's just part of our old life.
Right.
And so I rearranged all of that. And then you have to work through changing the light source and everything else about everything that you introduce, of course, otherwise it won't match.
Right.
And so there's a background. It was telling a story. I'm often after a narrative as an outcome. Hopefully some emotional triggers that draw people in. You know, that they knew a girl like that, or they had a girl work on their ranch who looked like that, or something. Or my granddad, his wife looked like that, or something. And some of the tack that's on the wall, the bridle and things like that. They're just those little triggers that assist people to absorb what the message is about this girl from the North Country. She probably doesn't look like a Southwest cowgirl. She might be from, up near the Lake Districts or somewhere like that. Mm-hmm. But that's why I named her Girl from the North Country. Yeah. And so all of that, and then of course the challenge of actually achieving it with a piece of charcoal.
Well, it still has the detail like to horses. It's a lot of work. I can see that.
Yeah.
There's a couple other pieces I want to talk to.
Sure.
Because this was a kind of a humorous one. It's called a One Way.
Yeah. Well, it was our last trip through Texas, which I've lost track of how many years, probably 7 or 8 years ago. And we came over to meet up with a friend and do some driving around. And our friend Jim is a very generous guy with his time. He's retired. And anyway, we went to Fort Worth and Dallas, of course. And they have a parade there every day where they walk the longhorn cattle down the street, and they have a whole lot of guys on horses and some people on wagons and everything else, which was a great opportunity to take some photographs, just happy snaps. One of the guys on horses is the one that I've used in that painting. And then not far from that was a street sign, one way, And so I was thinking about, just something a little bit cheerful and bright, but with a message as well. And so I eliminated everything else from that street scene, except for that one-way sign, and put him in a desert, which is southwestern. Mm-hmm. And I was able to use the detail of the guy who was all dressed up for the occasion, And just, it's a bit whimsical, but there's also a little message there. And people can make up their own message about one way, like is cowboy one way, or is he going the wrong way in the modern era, or whatever, But
it seemed like a subliminal message.
Yeah, but it's up to people to make up their own message.
Well, I like that. That's how when I'm presenting art to people, I don't like to interpret for them.
Yeah.
Let them do that.
Yeah, and for you to do it for yourself as well,
Yeah.
Create your own story.
There's this last one we'll talk about, because I think I have my favorites.
That's good.
The Bay, I love that one. But,
yeah.
This piece we'll talk about has detail, but it's another contemporary thing, and it's the machine.
Yeah.
And it's Harley-Davidson. It's pretty nice.
Thank you so much. Yeah, well, it gets back to my commitment to hyper-realism. So every year in our little village, now so Koran is just a tiny village. It has a general store, it has an old hall, it has a cafe, and just lately in the old joinery timber factory, which was 150 years old, they've put in a brew house.
Oh, nice.
Which is pretty exciting. So anyway, every year we would have a historical motorcycle show, just for fun. They would come from 100 miles away. And 5 years ago, there was a 1948 Knucklehead Harley turned up, and I was down there. I used to help run the show, but I don't anymore. And so I would walk around and just take photographs of the bikes. And I have a history with bikes, like a lot of guys do. And I was chasing mostly the engines because of the beauty of the chrome under sunlight and the shadow that gives me the dimension and things like that, plus the love of motorbikes.
Yeah.
And I had a 74 shovelhead Harley many years ago, so the Harley was a bit of a favourite for me. I took the Snap as well as others, Triumphs and VSAs and la la la. But that one stood out, and so I went about drawing that. But when I started on the drawing, which I do freehand, I realised that every piece of chrome had a reflection of me in it, holding a little iPhone. And so, like my son said, there's your first self-portrait, Dad.
Oh, right there.
Yeah. So, on the air cleaner, chrome air cleaner, there is a portrait of the artist. So it was
That is really cool.
completely accidental. Yeah. And it was a challenge to actually do it. There's a challenge that I love.
So in the process, it's a graphite. How are you doing the silver part? Is it like a white
Yep.
graphite
Yeah. It's just there are, I think,
or white pencil?
there may be a touch of white, which is like they call it a white charcoal. I use a General's charcoal, which is an American charcoal pencil. But mostly it's white paper. It's just the paper. So when I was young, from pencil, I went through a long phase of watercolor as well. And that's a normal transition, I have never studied art, but reading about the old world artists, it was a natural transition to go from drawing to watercolor or ink and then into your oils, which I did. I thought, well, that's how it's done. So I spent a lot of time with watercolor. So in watercolor, typically and historically, you use the white of the paper for white. Yeah. You don't apply white. And so that's how I work with charcoal.
Well, it's funny because the engine really feels more like a watercolor feel to it, right? Doesn't it?
Okay. Well, to you, that's great. Yeah.
Well, it does.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, no, it is a great piece. I love the diversity of what you're doing, and the skill level is just off the charts.
Thank you.
And we're very honored to have you in Blue Rain Gallery.
Well, thank you so much. And the feeling is very mutual. This is the first time I've walked in here, but I've admired it for a long time. And it's an exceptional gallery. I'm very, very fortunate, and thank you very much.
The space is beautiful, isn't it?
Oh, it is. This is mind-blowing. And the art, your selection of artists is, I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to encourage our audience to subscribe to our podcast. If you don't do that, you can always go to blueraingallery.com under the menu bar podcast. Also like to encourage you all to visit our online store, bluerainprintshop.com. Bring art into your everyday life. Thank you, Lew.
Thank you so much.